Call the meeting to order. Take a roll call at this time. Mayor Pro Tem, are you here? Councilman Reinbark, are you here? Councilmember Anderson, are you here? Councilmember Barnett, are you here? Councilmember Spears, are you here? Councilmember Spears, are you here? Councilmember Waddell, are you here? And the chair is here. First item of business is C1 is approval of the minutes. C2 is a resolution designated principal bulletin board for official public notices. C3 is a resolution authorizing city manager to enter into a lease with Maritime West Development LLC for space located at 4284 U.S. Highway 421 to store WPD specialized vehicles and equipment. C4 is a resolution authorizing city manager to purchase one bucket truck from Custom Truck One Source of Forest, Virginia in the amount of $171,441 from the Fleet Replacement Fund. C5 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an amendment 2 with Empire Towing and Transport LLC in the amount up to $36,500 for towing services of the city-owned vehicles. C6 is a resolution authorizing city manager to enter into an agreement with Johnson Controls Incorporated for security cameras at the Encino Sports Complex in the amount of $117,201.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
C6, with this camera system out of Encino, will it be capable of integrating to our Sting system cameras to kind of have a centralized hub of?
I haven't asked that question, but I'm sure the answer is yes.
Okay, yeah. If we want to, I mean, we don't have to know it tonight, but maybe by tomorrow, just.
Let's make sure that my guess is correct.
Morning.
Morning, Mayor, Council. Unfortunately, right now we don't have fiber optic service to the park. It is down the street, and we're coordinating with AT&T to bring it on site. We are putting future infrastructure in for interduct for fiber optics that we'll be able to connect to the Sting Center in the future.
So once fiber optic is installed at some point in the not too distant future, it's basically a flip of the switch to be able to integrate to the Sting system. There's no software upgrades that would be required for this camera system. It's literally just the connectivity from the fiber optic.
There might be some additional equipment in our telecom room in the restroom facility.
In what facility?
The restroom facility at the Encino Sports Complex, because right now it's a standalone system.
So it is a standalone system. So yeah, I'd like to have that figured out whether or not, because basically we should have every camera system that we have, in my opinion, should integrate to the Sting system.
Agreed.
And if we can do that on the front end, put the necessary infrastructure in. When I say infrastructure, probably just the software capability, right? Because if we can connect to the fiber in the not too distant future, that's what we need to be doing, in my opinion.
Absolutely, I'll research that and get a proposal for it.
Thank you.
So how long will it take? Do we know?
For an answer on the upgrade,
Yeah.
I can call Johnson Controls today and see if I can get an answer for you by tomorrow night.
You know, this is confusing, Tony, and the only reason I bring it up because it was brought up at our retreat when, we're having issues out there at the golf course in regards to some of the fiber optic issues that we're dealing there, and you think, well, you've got it all over the place. How come it wouldn't work? How come you don't have the high speed? And this is, I like to have a thorough understanding as to why we can't do it in a much quicker fashion than we have been doing it, or run a line. We're not running water and sewer lines. We're running a cable.
Yeah, well,
I guess it sounds that simple to us, novices, but I just don't understand it.
It's all due to cost to bring fiber to the location, but AT&T is working their way down the street. So in the near future, we'll actually be able to have the capability to put fiber on site for a very low cost.
Yeah, because AT&T has always been very, very helpful with municipalities and county governments, Yeah, we know that I know there was years ago, there was an issue about cities running it, and they says, oh, no, we'll do it. They went to the legislature, they blocked us, and it seems like they've always been proactive in this stuff, and it seems that they either, I don't know, it seems very slow in how they react to municipal governments and county governments.
since I spoke with so much confidence on the connectivity to the Sting Center on the past issue, I'll speak with confidence on this as well. There is, the biggest issue with the fiber is that it is privately held and privately run and very little government oversight. Not that I am for government oversight on everything, but in this case, the fiber providers are running the fiber to the most beneficial locations for them in terms of where they can get the largest number of customers first and pick up the largest influx of cash. And so I'm sure that while it seems very logical that it ought to be here or ought to be there, they are pretty much on their own with regard to that. Now, there are some cable folks that are coming in that are trying to fill in the voids in that system, but they are not yet completely up and running.
Well, I think this is a good example to show the legislature that they asked that municipal governments not participate in the extension of the extension of fiber optics for private, so they could gain the private monies that they want. But for that they would help and they would push and they would be very helpful to local governments and state governments. And what we see here is that they just drag their feet when it comes to things like that. I think we need to have a conversation with their local representative who happens to be a very nice person. And if we do have issues, I think we should voice those issues as a community, because if we have people out there at Encino playing soccer or playing sports and something happens out there and we have a camera system, somebody says, well, how comes the cameras don't work? Well, because we don't have it connected to fiber optic. I think the community ought to know that.
Mr. Mayor, can I chime in?
Yes, you can.
You all bring up good points, and I think I've stressed this for the entirety of my past 4 years on council. We really need to do our due diligence and put our best effort forward of getting things done prior to, instead of having to circle back around and get things done. It's going to cost us less in the long run, even if we have to wait a little. I really feel like that, and when I say I'm going to stress something for a period of time, this will be one of the new things in my head that I'll be stressing, that we've made sure that we've done our best effort to make sure things are where they need to be, instead of having to come back and do it on the back end.
Agree.
One more. I'm just driving that point home. So the fiber optic, to certainly agree with all discussion points there. My point is just that we need to have the capability to be able to just plug in and we go to the Sting Center and whatever software needs to be done, or, within reason, of course. I wouldn't assume it's much, but I think we should make that, whether it's tomorrow night or in the very near future, toss it in there. That'll be, as soon as the fiber optic is complete, then we just plug it in and have a standing operation.
We'll attempt to have the answer for you tomorrow night.
Great, thank y'all.
While we're talking about this, something that came up several months ago, and I don't think anybody's dragging their feet on it, is the security cameras around the Hanover High School. And that would be in coordination with the county and the school board. And I don't know if it just, for lack of...
We have a number for that. We simply need to find out how much participation. I think some of the elected officials had discussions with elected officials at the county with regard to cost participation on that project. And we have not yet finalized that.
But that's something that's still being worked on?
It can be. The discussion has gone on at the elected level, and we certainly can pick it up at the staff level from there.
Please do.
Any more questions? Go ahead. Thank you.
PH1 is an ordinance directing the housing inspector to vacate, close, and repair the dwelling at 515 Orange Street as unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, and directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. And I guess, Tony, I did receive a letter from one of the owners in respect to this particular item. If we pass this ordinance, it would still give them the opportunity to have all of the repairs done within 6 months.
Yes, sir. If you pass this ordinance, the intent of the ordinance is to force the person, whomever, to go ahead and effect the repairs. This would give them a 6-month window. You have options on these ordinances, as you always do. You could pass it as it's suggested, given in 6 months, and then you could extend that period at a later time if there was progress that was made. You can delay action on this ordinance until a later date if you choose, or you can even lengthen the amount of time during which they'll be given opportunity to repair the building. So if you wanted to go to a year's time frame in order to repair, you could change this ordinance from 6 months to a year.
So if they, within the 6 months, if they were making repairs, and we've set the timetable for 6 months, and they wanted to extend that time period, could they then come back and ask through working with Brian's office to do
They would
that?
come forward through Brian's office, and Brian would come forward and say, we'd like to extend it another 6 months or another year or
Okay,
whatever.
very good. Yes, sir, Mr. Rambar.
This has been extended, Brian, can you come up? 15. This has been extended a number of times.
Correct. We started these conversations back in 2015. We took it to our administrative hearing in spring of 2021. And there's also been historic preservation case on this property, both of which expired after a few years. So they've had an extensive amount of time to make these repairs.
Is this a duplex? I rode by, it looks like it's two separate units.
There's a main house and a carriage house. We are not looking at the carriage house on this. That's addressed, I think, as 513.
Okay, but the main structure is just a single family?
Correct.
Okay, and it's not occupied, it was a car in the driveway this morning?
Yeah,
So-
that car's been there. Yeah, the house itself has not been occupied in close to a decade.
This question is kind of silly, but what makes you think that this is going to have any better effect than what we've had on these people since?
Since we started the filing process for this, they've submitted a COA application, which is the biggest movement we've had in about 10 years. And then obviously, as the mayor knows, he's been contacted by some of the family who are now getting involved after an extensive period of time. So these processes tend to motivate compliance, and then they also set a timeline. So after the period of time within that ordinance, our office could, if necessary, go and make stabilizing repairs to this historic structure, which is something that I know we've discussed in this public forum before.
Well, certainly, this is not one that we would like to see raised, but we would certainly like to see it brought into compliance.
Correct.
And they've certainly had enough time. I hope that this gets their attention.
That was the intent of filing this, was to get their attention and motivate compliance.
Thank you, sir.
And Madam Attorney, what Brian had talked about being noticed, that's already on file, correct, at the courthouse?
Yes, sir. They've
Okay.
already filed.
Very good. Thank you. Item PH2 is an ordinance directing the housing inspector to vacate, close, and repair the dwelling at 126 Brookwood Avenue as unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, and directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. Ordinances. 01 is an ordinance reducing the speed limit from 35 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour along Country Club Road between Riceville Avenue and Oleander Drive. 02A is an ordinance making supplemental appropriations in the amount of $2,988,100 for developer contribution capital balances in NP to Cape Fear River LLC and the Proximity Watermark LLC to the Streets and Sidewalks Capital Projects Fund for the installation of a roundabout and associated road improvements at the intersection of Independence Boulevard and River Road and pedestrian improvements on Independence Boulevard. And you can see what the budget impact is there. I believe that 70% of this is being covered by the developers and 30% by the city, but those said 30% improvements are based on the crosswalks and sidewalks that we would have to put in as a result of this particular project. Okay, very good. Item 02B is a resolution authorizing the city manager to negotiate and enter into an agreement with NNP, Cape Fear River LLC, and the Proximity Watermark LLC for the installation of a roundabout and associated roadway improvements at the intersection of Independence Boulevard and River Road with pedestrian improvements on Independence Boulevard. Then 03A is the ordinance making the appropriation of $1,398,511 to the Parks and Recreation Capital Projects Fund for the Encino Sports Complex, and you can see what the budget impact is there. And then 03B is the resolution authorizing a change order to TA Loving Company Incorporated for the Encino Sports Complex in the amount of $1,398,511. Yes, sir, go ahead, sir.
Guess that would be Amy?
The sports complex would be Matt Hart.
Pardon me?
Are you talking about 03A and 03B?
Yes, sir.
Matt Hart with engineering.
Okay. Thinking about you, Amy. Good morning. I know that practically everything we do comes in with these surprises midway, at the end, or whatever. How did we get to this point on this $1,400,000?
Well, we got to this point by negotiation for one, sir. TA Loving was a very good partner with the city of Wilmington. We actually reduced the unit rate under our contract docs by 40% for the import of clean sand. So that's a great help for the city of Wilmington. How we got from point A to point B is in March of 2023, we started to discover that we had some soil cover issues, and we were hitting waste material a little bit early in our grading activities. It was supposed to be a balanced site. So we went on an exploratory investigation with potholing to try to figure out what kind of soil depth layer we actually have to develop a regrading plan, and also to work with DEQ to see if we can have any relief on that 18 inches of soil cover. After a decision with DEQ, they do not want to relax the 18 inches of soil cover. So we developed a regrading plan, did an import analysis, and this is the number that was brought forward.
I don't even know what to ask you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Let's bring Amy up here. Amy, can you give us a better explanation? I believe that the soil cover that was originally put on there by the state of North Carolina or the cap was not sufficient enough. Somebody Tom, could you please explain a little bit further? I understand the money.
Yes, if you remember, this site was originally an unregulated landfill, and as part of the remediation program that was in place prior to the city taking possession of the land, the site was to be covered with 18 inches of topsoil. What we discovered subsequently during our construction process that uniform depth did not exist. We tried to determine the cause of it. It's still somewhat unknown. We've been told that some of it could be attributed to settling or some erosion. As Matt said, they work very closely with DEQ to determine if there could be some kind of waiver, but we do believe it's in the best interest of the public to use this site, that we proceed with the 18-inch soil cover on top of the unregulated landfill contents.
But Tom, when DEQ did the cover, because they were the responsible agency to do this, and then when they turned it over to us to say, okay, this thing we're completed with our scope of work here, wasn't there an evaluation or some sort of a checkoff that says the 18 inches of cover is?
There are really two agencies. There's the Department of Environmental Quality and also the Brownfields Agency. And so while there would have been inspection, acreage of that size, it was just inconsistent. Don't really know the cause. We've been at least advised when I've been involved on it that some of it could have been due to settling, which is very possible. But there would have been an inspection process signed off, but it's really undetermined as to the exact cause.
So that wouldn't raise a red flag? I mean, especially on a delicate site like this. I mean, we've dealt with brownfields situations ad infinitum. But, I mean, I remember when this was all going on, we were terribly excited about they were going to cap it. And we even talked about piercing the cap with light poles and other such stuff. But to have this come up because we didn't, I mean, the box got checked, but that falls under due diligence. I mean, we were assuming a hell of a lot of liability by accepting that to the tune of this and God knows where else.
Well, I would say we did a significant amount of due diligence, and you can still do some soil samples and some boring, but again, the inconsistency. If it was uniformly throughout the site, it would have been easy to detect. The inconsistency and the sporadic nature of the covering, and correct me if I'm wrong, is what really led to it. And as Matt said, we did some potholing, which is to sort of scratch back, but it was in the process of the site preparation that we determined, hey, we're seeing some contents at a level that we shouldn't have expected to see. It's a very large site, a lot of acreage, square footage. And so while it may have been done in some areas, you know, a testing or sampling does not determine the whole universe of the condition.
So we, in effect, held the state at no fault. I mean, no liability or anything. We couldn't go back to them and say, look, this is what you told us, and this is what we got.
It's, we worked with Brownsville staff as well as DEQ. We felt like this shouldn't be something that the city should have to incur. We tried to seek some avenues. We did the best we could. At the end of the day, what we were told was, again, Matt and others can correct me if I'm wrong, potentially it could have been some erosion during the period of time, or it could have been also some settling. Nonetheless, we find ourselves, and this is what makes it so unique, and I want council to remember and celebrate, and yourselves, for recognizing that such a challenging site to develop for public and private benefit couldn't have occurred without probably the public involvement. This is land that would have remained fallow had it not been probably for the city council choosing to make this brownfield one of the signature recreation facilities in the southeast.
Tom,
Yes, sir.
You referenced the possibility of a waiver from DEQ. Have we investigated what that process looks like? I'm sure it would elongate our time frame some, and
We did, and in fact, we tried to see if there was an opportunity to go below, Matt, correct, 18 inches, is that correct? Below 18 inches to 12 inches. We tried to have that discussion. And again, you know, in the interest of the well-being of the community, we believe that even though we could have continued pushing to a point and brought it to a political perspective, the 18-inch cover is really a best practice, and we should just proceed with making this adjustment. It could have been erosion. We don't know exactly. It could have been some settling as well.
So would the waiver be for DEQ basically to allow us to go from 18-inch to 12-inch, and they were indicating that they would be favorable, that they would side with us on that, and we made an executive decision? No?
We didn't get that, and I'll let Matt speak to that. We didn't get permission to do that.
Yes, sir. So about 2 weeks ago, we had our final decision with DEQ that they would not allow 18 inches or less than 18 inches of cover. We were trying to proceed to get 12 inches of cover in some of the storm swell areas outside the public involvement area.
Gotcha.
They just felt like it was best practice to keep it at 18 inches.
So they're requiring 18 inches across the board, so there is no possibility of a waiver.
Correct.
Thank you.
Do we have any other areas with this same challenge that we know of?
No, sir, not on this site. It was only in the south fields.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, then we have reports, RP1, Council's Appointments Committee for Boards and Commissions. Councilmember Rivenbark will be giving us a report from that. And then RP1A, resolution dissolving the Vision 2020 Oversight Committee. And I believe that one thing was left off the agenda, which was the recommendation from the naming committee for the...
Yes, sir. You'll
for the
recall
building.
we had some discussion at the last meeting, and you decided to move that forward to this meeting. We failed to pick that up and carry it forward, so we will have a report from the naming committee, assuming council would like to amend the agenda and allow for that to occur.
Okay. Let's amend can I have a motion to amend the agenda for the naming committee so we can name the building? We have a motion made by...
Will the report just be the same information that we received from the last one?
Yeah. So we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes, second by Councilmember Barnett, to amend the agenda to add the naming committee's report onto this agenda. It was just forgotten.
Just forgot?
Yeah. Well,
What it is.
yeah, just forgotten. Okay, all in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, that brings us to the end of this.
Mr. Mayor, we have two items for you today. We have a presentation from Brian Clark with NC Ports to give you an update on activity at the ports. So, Brian, if you want to come forward.
Morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I appreciate the opportunity to briefly speak and give some updates on the ports. I'd like to make this in the future more of a regular update. There's a lot of activity going on at the ports. both here and in Morehead City. Want to share a few highlights today. Obviously, with some of the economic challenges, we are seeing some downturn in our volumes. However, we have recently been notified that we are receiving some new regular weekly services. December 5th, we'll have a new service starting by Seaboard Marine, one of the major north-south carriers, really focusing on the apparel and textile industry as well as the refrigerated trade. So we're very excited to welcome them. It's a new customer to the port. In January, we're expecting a new service that will be launched by Maersk Line. As you're aware, the Maersk Line facility, performance team facility off of 421 will be opening after the new year. It's a major investment, about a 300,000 square foot cold storage facility. And Maersk Line will launch new services to support the volumes in and out of that cold storage facility, so we're excited about that. We're breaking ground early next year on our new intermodal rail facility. This is supported by a federal RAISE grant. That'll be about a $25 million project, $18 million grant. That'll allow us to build out about 5,000 additional working track for the intermodal movement of containers. And then we were just recently notified we received a PIDP grant, a Port Infrastructure Development Grant for $11 million to realign our north gate, which currently exits on Burnett Boulevard. It'll be rerouted through our north property and exit on South Front Street, which will better align with the redevelopment of South Front up to the bridge. So just a couple brief updates. I do want to talk, we are working closely with the division about the pending bridge closures for next year. We are very concerned about the traffic impact, and there have been some discussions about alternatives. We'd like to make a formal request about the potential temporary allowance of 3rd Street to alleviate some of the traffic. And happy to share any information or details if that would support that. Thank you. Yes, sir.
The alignment, the realignment of the north gate, or the gate that dumps out onto Burnett.
Yes, sir.
I mean Shipyard. When that's completed, will that lessen some of the traffic on Carolina Beach Road?
So the new gate that we're talking about actually dumps out onto Burnett Boulevard today. It's our north gate, and that will most of that traffic today is using 3rd and South Front and accessing that north gate as it stands today. The impact is really on the port because of the alignment with the rail track. And this will actually eliminate a lot of the queues that we see developing as that traffic gets impacted by switching trains. Okay. The entrance on Shipyard Boulevard is complete. It's operating extremely well. And we're seeing a significant improvement in our turn times processing what is predominantly container traffic through that south gate.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Hey, Brian. So you're asking for 3rd Street to be used as an alternative to be able to bring in truck traffic through the Isabel Homes up 3rd to the port, which I believe y'all shared with us that if you look at it from that perspective, it's about 5 miles as opposed to going all the way up toward College Road, Shipyard, and then to the port, which is, I think, 13 and a half miles or 14 miles, which, of course, you got its own traffic issues.
Significant amount of longer
traffic
distance.
issues there. In respect to the port, when the ship comes in, and you have to tell me how this works logistically, you're taking the container off the ship. Is it coming off the ship, putting it on the truck, and then directly getting it out? Or is it being stored or stacked onto the port property, and then the trucks are coming in and then taking it out at a later point in time?
So when we work vessels, the cargo will come off, whether it's a container or general cargo, and it'll go to a place of rest. It'll be stored for any number of days. It could be 1 or 2 days for a fast-moving container. It could be longer for some of the slower-moving bulk and break bulk cargo. So typically, the cargo is not delivered shipside or directly off the vessel.
So you're going to have truck traffic coming 24/7?
Our container gate is only open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. today. Our north gate is only open Monday through Friday during normal business hours. We do have some tenants that operate 24 hours, predominantly the wood chip, the Enviva operation, and some of our other tenants will operate around the clock. But it's much smaller volume of truck traffic.
But on the Enviva, is most of that being moved out by rail?
Most of it's by rail. They do frequently run some truck traffic as well, though.
Okay,
But they will run 24 hours a day, though.
So to store so you're storing containers on site, and then the truck comes in at some point in time, during the week or whenever to pick up that cargo and then move it out.
That's correct.
Okay, got you. I was thinking that if it comes out directly, I mean, if it's moved off the port as soon as it gets off the ship, then we know when the ship's coming in, we can notify the community that the ship's in, and
We'll typically see containers moving within a couple days, within that week after a ship works, but those empty containers will get returned at some point in time. So there's a lot of back and forth traffic that is not directly associated with a vessel alongside working.
so, and the container or the containers that are being moved out, they're all shapes and sizes. On the weight of those vehicles, what's the difference between that, let's just say, in a 18-wheeler that's bringing in product to Walmart? Do we know?
So the import containers are typically lighter. We can get an average number, but I would estimate a import container is probably about 10 tons on average. An export container is typically heavier. But a lot of the export containers are actually being loaded on the port itself. So that container will be returned as an empty, and then we'll load that cargo on the port. So you'll see a range of weights on container trucks moving across the port. Imports are typically lighter than exports, though.
Just when we ride down Burnett Boulevard, we see that mountain of containers always. Are they mostly empty or full?
If you're looking at the closest lot to Burnett Boulevard, that's our empty storage area.
Okay.
And then as you get closer to the vessel and to the working berth, that's where we'll store our loaded containers.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead.
It's still the standard that you either have a 20-foot or a 40-foot container, correct? Whereas most tractor trailers these days are 52, is that about?
Most over-the-road trailers are 53s. For the standard container size, 20-foot, 40-foot. We do handle some 45-foot containers, but very few. And the highest percentages of 40-foot containers.
Point being quite a bit smaller than the tractor trailers.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So are you saying once they're stored, then you're going to ship them out from 7 to 6? Or is that?
Our gates are open from 7 to 6, and the trucking companies will arrive based on their dispatch orders. We don't actually dispatch to cargo. So if the shipper who's receiving that cargo wants to receive it on a Tuesday, they'll send the driver in on that day to pick the container up, depending on where it's going.
Okay, so it's throughout the day.
But our working hours are from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would this request for 3rd Street access, is that just carte blanche for all dispatch vehicles would be going down 3rd Street as they wanted to, or would there be any sort of logistical attempt to route, to kind of split the difference on some of the traffic?
So there's a natural flow of cargo that typically uses shipyard to College based on its destination. We also see containerized cargo that's going to the south of the port, off of the Raleigh Road and River Road industrial complexes. There's a large percentage, though, that will use the bridge today to either access 74, 76, or 421 up to 140. It would be very difficult for us to limit, I think, which cargo gets to use that. But the request is that we're able to use 3rd Street in the opposite direction of what the bridge closure is. So if the bridge is allowing inbound traffic, if that's the final decision on the temporary repairs, that 3rd is used for outbound traffic only.
I'm curious about something. You said that some of your containers are actually packed or loaded at the port, but how do the materials, they're trucked in to get to the port? Is this from the freezer? Is this from the cold storage thing or what?
It's actually mostly dry cargo, but the cargo itself is trucked or railed into the port. It's done in more of a bulk fashion. And then we will typically take that bulk cargo and load it into the containers on the port itself. So
Okay.
We do that with soybeans, we do that with export pulp and paper. We do that with some paper products, some heavy paper products that's supporting the refrigerated trade.
Okay,
But
so
that's
some of
railed or trucked in separately.
Okay, so it's coming by train, but there are trucks bringing stuff to
There
the
are,
port
yes.
that then has to be loaded.
That's correct.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Will there be trucks carrying quote-unquote contaminated stuff?
We don't handle any contaminated cargo. We do handle hazardous cargo. And certainly if that's a restriction that would be imposed on this request, and that's something we would be able to communicate out to our community, our trucking community.
Okay, so saying that you wouldn't have a lot of hazardous stuff on the road, is that what you're saying? Or?
We handle a small percentage of our containerized cargo is hazardous. It's permitted to be shipped, and it's handled in a fashion that's required based on segregation between other hazardous cargo or what hours of the day that cargo is loaded. But again, if it's a restriction that would be imposed, we can certainly make that restriction. That hazardous cargo would not be permitted to use this alternative route.
Okay, I kind of get nervous a little bit, you know, having that much stuff on the road.
Understood.
All right, thank you.
I think that is a good restriction, if you're willing to do that, rather than going through this heavy residential area on a pretty narrow street. I mean, I think we're going to have to trim trees and maybe, you know, restrict some parking and do a number of things. So maybe not taking hazardous materials, if that's a possibility. I mean, I would work with the police chief and the city manager on that, but sounds reasonable to me.
I think it's a reasonable restriction if this is agreed to.
Yes, and then I guess there's no other question. The last thing I want to know is on the amount of, or the volume of truck traffic that's coming into the port on a daily basis. So we may get a question from some residents as to what that volume may look like on a daily basis. Do we know?
So based on the volume that we track, and we don't track all of our tenants' truck transactions at the gate, but based on the volume we track, it's approximately 500 truck transactions a day between both gates.
Okay.
That's conservative, and I would estimate probably at least 50% more based on our tenants being on the port.
Okay.
So it could be somewhere in the 750 truck transactions a day.
Okay.
Not all of them would use third. As I said, there is a percentage that goes to the south, down River Road. There is a percentage that uses Shipyard today and up to College.
Sure. Okay.
Could you give us a guesstimate as if it's, 700 trucks a day, what would you guess? I know you don't have a real number. The percentage would be, how many trucks would be traveling in one direction or the other, depending on the bridge on 3rd Street?
On the container traffic, it's usually pretty equally split between imports and exports. And typically, most drivers will do 2 transactions. They'll drop a container, and then they'll pick another container up in the same move. So I would say that's roughly 50-50 split. A driver will come in with a container and then leave with another container. On the general cargo traffic, I would estimate most of it's arriving as loaded truck traffic.
Okay, but what's a guesstimate about a number? You said it might be, 500 or 50% more, which would be 750. So, I mean, obviously, is it 50% that would go down 3rd? Or, I mean, what are people going to look forward to here?
I would say probably about 50%. Conservatively, 50% of that truck traffic would need to use 3rd at some point in time.
Okay, so it's going to be
or uses the bridge today in both directions.
Right, so it's going to be traveling in one direction or the other, depending on the bridge. It's going to be somewhere at least 300 trucks a day.
I would think so, yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, we also have a presentation this morning from Christina Haley with WDI regarding the placement of some holiday lights.
Okay. This should be more lighthearted. This should be lighter discussion.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right. I am here to discuss our recent effort to bring holiday lights to downtown Wilmington. Our purpose is to bring cheer, business, and make downtown more attractive during the holiday season. We have several sources of funding, combined resources from WDI, MSD, Bring It Downtown, for a total of $40,000 to light up downtown Wilmington at the foot of Market Street and on the Riverwalk. We received 4 bids for this proposal. As you can see, there's a range of bids that we received. 2 from crews of the film industry, and 2 more professional companies that have had a long track record in installing Christmas lights. We had some difficulties negotiating contracts and insurance with the film folks, and the ranges of the bid proposals proved challenging for this first pilot year. Our original proposal included 19 oak trees dressed with lights on Market Street, lighting up the Riverwalk hand railings from Market to Orange Street, and including a few of the pocket parks, and also dressing up the visitor center with holiday lights. This photo here is sort of what I was thinking in lighting up Market Street between Water and Front Street, but unfortunately, we had a couple issues with infrastructure, electrical challenges in the area of Market Street between Water and Front Street. If you can see the yellow in there, on all of the D lamp posts were not able to provide enough power even for 5mm LED lights. This was per city engineering. We also had challenges going south of the purple and pink portions on the Riverwalk. There was electrical challenges on the Riverwalk South, so we could only bring Christmas lights all the way to Ann Bonnie's restaurant, and we'll have to stop from there. But we're still charging forward with our proposal. Here's some of the proposed areas where we'll be installing lights. Riverwalk hand railings, leaving the first railing open, lighting up the Venus flytraps, lighting up the visitor center, maybe doing something in the pocket park in a later date, but we will try and light the posts at least, and lighting up the 16 lamp posts that go from Market to Dock Street. So we have chosen Double Check pressure washing. They have installed Christmas lights for us downtown before. Well, not for us, but for Common Desk. Here's a photo of a Common Desk last year where they installed a Christmas tree wreaths and some lights on the building. They have an installation date that's coming. We hope to be available through if we need to provide any maintenance to the lights, reinstall lights. We also have ordered backup lights to install on the Riverwalk if needed. Service calls will be provided in 48 hours, which is per our licensing agreement with the city. We will also have to fund additional money to do any replacements. And WDI will be purchasing these lights after being used, so we'll have this within our inventory to use for future years. So here's the project area. Like I noted before, it's going to be going from Market Street south to Dock. We're installing 5mm LED multicolored lights on the Riverwalk hand railings, 5mm LED multicolored lights on the light posts, C9 warm white lights for the visitor center, and the visitor center posts will be using 5mm LEDs. We'll be doing green C9 LEDs on the Venus flytraps, and just some warm white C9 LED lights around the garden area. Those are kind of this is my vision board for what I hope downtown Wilmington's Riverwalk would look like now and in the future. We'd like to model the waterfront in Tampa, St. Pete. Also have another photograph from San Antonio, Texas Riverwalk in one of these later slides. This is the conceptual design from Double Check pressure washing. We're also looking to light Muters Park, as well as 2 of the oak trees on Water Street in front of the J.W. Brooks building. So here's the timeline that we've been looking at. We've started planning and looking for funding in October of 2023. We design and contract this month. Target install of November 28th, and to continue through about a week-long installation. We'll have the lights on display from December until January 19th, which is per our licensing agreement. We will have the lights removed and shut off. So this is something that we've been talking about through our meetings with the Wilmington CVB, Chamber, DBA, and looking forward to their Riverwalk assessment, which Kim, I think, will explain in a few months ahead. But in meeting, we've really looked at trying to make the Riverwalk a destination rather than an attraction, and bringing this this festiveness downtown, bringing these holiday lights to the Riverwalk is just an added bonus during the year to go on top of what we already see through our beloved holiday Christmas tree lighting each year. So in future years, we'd like to work with the city to improve our infrastructure challenges, overcome those electrical challenges that we've seen that's kind of eliminated the possibility of lighting up Market Street. I've heard it's been done in years past, and I'd like to see that happen again. We'll work to collaborate with our stakeholders to do a more elaborate plan in the future and develop a full marketing proposal. We'll hopefully next year time to coincide with the lighting of the downtown Christmas tree, so you'll not only have the lighting of the Christmas tree, but also the light of downtown Wilmington. And then I'd like to include it with other future events. I'd like to bring a downtown holiday flotilla or some other means to activate both sides of the Riverwalk, light the water and light the Riverwalk. And hopefully, in conjunction with the business community, make sure everybody has their storefronts lit, as well as the buildings that are along the Riverwalk. Having those lit on the other side would be ideal as well. So with that, I will take any questions.
Christina, I just want to say thank you for all your hard work on this. You have worked diligently and come up with great ideas, and raising the money and coordinating all of this has been no small task. So thank you for working so hard on this. I do hope that we will move forward with trying to make sure that that Market Street could accommodate some future lighting. I know we used to have it years ago, and then for some reason we don't, and perhaps it's that electrical dearth that we have there on Market. So I hope that maybe we will find the money to sort of increase that, and that in the future too, you might go north on the Riverwalk. Now that we own the whole thing, at least up to the, well, we own the whole Riverwalk, but up to the Hilton, now that we have the Coast Guard area. So those are my comments, but thanks again. I appreciate all your work.
Pleasure.
Piggyback on Mayor Pro Tem, agree, this is a phenomenal initiative, excited to see it come to light, no pun intended. But Market Street, I'd love for staff to see some of the information on the engineering. I mean, these lights don't pull much power at all, so are we really operating on that tight of a bandwidth issue from our power grid that we can't? I mean, I've got a real Clark Griswold thing going at my house where I've got them plugged into a bunch of different outlets. Probably not the safest thing, so fire department, if you're listening, be on the lookout. But it's concerning if we don't have enough power to plug lights in. But I'd like to see that report, see how much, what that actual delta is, if possible, for future years. Obviously not for this year. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Christina. Thank you. Good work.
Mr. Mayor, we have a request for a closed session this morning. You have the motion before you.
Okay.
Motion.
Let me read the motion to enter into a closed session pursuant to the provisions of North Carolina General Statute, Section 143-318.11A and 9, in order for the City Council to, 1, discuss and take action to protect public safety as it relates to existing or potential criminal activity. We have a motion. Motion made by Councilmember Barnett, second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we will now go into closed session.